"Please, Miss Eleanor, you must eat something," the maid whispered, her voice trembling as she placed the tray on the small table in the darkened room. Eleanor Ashworth sat motionless by the window, her once vibrant green eyes now hollow as they stared out at the sprawling gardens of Ashworth Manor. The estate that had been her childhood paradise had become her prison. 3 weeks had passed since the reading of her father's will, 3 weeks since her world had shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. "I'm not hungry, Martha," Eleanor replied softly, her voice barely audible. Her hands, once adorned with rings befitting a gentleman's daughter, now lay bare in her lap, pale and trembling. Martha's eyes filled with tears. She had been Eleanor's maid since the girl was 10 years old, had watched her grow from a spirited child into a compassionate young woman of 23. To see her brought so low, by her own family no less, broke the old woman's heart. "They're saying terrible things downstairs, miss," Martha ventured carefully, kneeling beside Eleanor's chair. "Your stepmother, she's telling everyone that you forged documents, that you tried to steal your brother's inheritance." A bitter laugh escaped Eleanor's lips. "Of course she is. Victoria has always been a masterful storyteller." She turned to face Martha, and the maid gasped at the pain etched into those once joyful features. "Do you believe her, Martha? Do you think me capable of such treachery?" "Never, miss. Not in 1,000 years." Martha grasped Eleanor's cold hands. "You're the kindest soul I've ever known. When my grandson took ill last winter, you sold your mother's pearls to pay for the doctor. You've never turned away a person in need, never spoken an unkind word about anyone." Eleanor's eyes welled with tears. "Then why, Martha? Why would my own stepmother do this to me? Why would Edward, my own brother, stand beside her and call me a thief?" The question hung in the air like a curse. Eleanor knew the answer, had known it the moment her father's lawyer finished reading the will. Her father, Lord Thomas Ashworth, had left her a substantial inheritance, £30,000, and the small estate in Cornwall where her mother had been raised. It wasn't the grand manor or the title, which rightfully went to Edward, but it was enough for Eleanor to live independently, comfortably, for the rest of her life. But Victoria, her stepmother, had other plans. Within days of the funeral, she had produced documents, forged, Eleanor knew, though she couldn't prove it, that showed Eleanor had been secretly selling estate property for years, pocketing the profits. Edward, who had always been weak-willed and easily manipulated by his mother, had believed every word, or perhaps he simply found it convenient to believe. After all, if Eleanor were proven a thief, her inheritance would revert to him. "They've called for the magistrate," Martha whispered, her voice breaking. "He arrives tomorrow. Miss Eleanor, if they find you guilty, they could transport you, or worse." Eleanor closed her eyes. Transportation to the penal colonies in Australia, a death sentence for a gently raised woman. The thought should have terrified her, but she felt only numbness. Everything she had loved, everyone she had trusted, had turned against her. What did it matter what happened now? "There's something else, miss," Martha said urgently. "I overheard Victoria speaking with that awful Mr. Blackwood. She's arranged for you to be declared insane if the theft charges don't hold. They'll have you committed to an asylum." Now fear did pierce through Eleanor's numbness. The asylums were places of horror, where women disappeared forever, where any voice raised in protest was proof of madness itself. Victoria had thought of everything, had woven her web so carefully that there seemed no escape. "What am I to do?" Eleanor whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I have no one, Martha. No one who would believe me over Victoria's lies. My father's friends, they've all turned away. The neighbors whisper and stare. Even the servants avoid me now. Not all of them, miss. Not me. And not young Thomas. He knows you're innocent. But we're only servants. Who would listen to us?" Eleanor wiped her tears with shaking hands. "Then I must run. Tonight. If I stay, I'll be either imprisoned or institutionalized. At least if I flee, I'll have a chance. But where would you go? You have no money, no connections outside of this county. Victoria's made sure of that. Before Eleanor could respond, heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway. Both women froze. The door burst open and Edward stood there, his face flushed with drink. Behind him, Victoria's cold smile gleamed in the lamplight. "Eleanor," Edward said, his voice slurring slightly. "Mother says you're planning to run away. That would be very foolish." The magistrate would take it as an admission of guilt. Eleanor rose from her chair, drawing herself up to her full height. Despite everything, she would not cower. "I have committed no crime, Edward. You know that. You've always known it." Victoria glided into the room, her black mourning dress rustling like a serpent's scales. "Such dramatics, Eleanor. Really, you should have pursued the stage instead of trying to steal from your own family." She turned to Martha with icy disdain. "Leave us, now." Martha hesitated, her eyes pleading with Eleanor, but what choice did she have? With a last sorrowful glance, the old maid hurried from the room. "I've come to make you an offer," Victoria said, circling Eleanor like a predator. "A way out of this unfortunate situation." "What kind of offer?" Eleanor asked, though she dreaded the answer. "There's a man, Lord Pemberton. He's 67 years old, a widower, quite wealthy. He's expressed interest in a young wife." Victoria's smile widened. "He's not particular about her reputation, provided she comes with a proper dowry." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "You want me to marry that man? He's known throughout the county for his cruelty. His first 3 wives all died under mysterious circumstances." "Beggars cannot be choosers, my dear. Marry Lord Pemberton and I'll withdraw the theft charges. Refuse and tomorrow you'll face the magistrate. I've made quite sure there's sufficient evidence to convict you." "You're a monster," Eleanor breathed. Victoria's face hardened. "I'm a practical woman protecting my son's inheritance. Your father was a fool to leave you anything at all. You're not even his blood. Did you know that? Your precious mother was already carrying you when she married Thomas. He took her in out of pity, gave you his name, and this is how you repay him, by trying to steal from his true son." The words struck Eleanor like physical blows. "That's a lie, another of your lies." "Is it? Ask anyone who knew your mother before her marriage. She was a governess who got herself compromised. Thomas was the noble fool who saved her from ruin." Victoria leaned closer, her breath hot against Eleanor's face. "You're nobody, Eleanor, nothing. You should be grateful for Lord Pemberton's offer. It's more than a bastard deserves." Edward shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. He had never been brave enough to stand against his mother, and he wouldn't start now. Eleanor felt the room spinning. Could it be true? Had her entire life been built on a lie? She thought of her father, the man she'd called father, and his gentle kindness toward her. Had it all been obligation? Pity? "I need time to think," she managed to say. "You have until morning," Victoria replied coldly. "Lord Pemberton will arrive at noon tomorrow. You'll accept his proposal, or you'll face the consequences. The choice is yours." They left her then, locked the door from the outside. Eleanor sank to the floor, her body shaking with silent sobs. She was trapped, utterly and completely trapped. If she married Lord Pemberton, she would likely not survive a year. If she refused, she would be convicted of theft or declared insane. Either way, Victoria had won. The night deepened around her. Eleanor heard the household settling into sleep, heard the distant chiming of the grandfather clock in the hall, marking each hour of her captivity. At midnight, she rose and began packing a small bag with what few possessions she could carry. She would not marry Lord Pemberton. She would not give Victoria that satisfaction. She would run, and if they caught her, so be it. At least she would have tried. She was searching for something to pick the lock when she heard it, a soft scratching at her window. Eleanor froze, her heart pounding. The window was on the second floor, impossible to reach without a ladder. The scratching came again, more urgent this time. Slowly, Eleanor approached the window and pulled back the curtain. In the moonlight, she saw young Thomas, one of the stable boys, perched precariously on a ladder. He pressed a finger to his lips, urging silence, then carefully opened the unlocked window from outside. "Miss Eleanor," he whispered, "Martha sent me. There's a man waiting at the old gamekeeper's cottage, says he can help you, but we must go now, before the house wakes." "What man? I don't understand." "No time to explain, miss. Please, you must trust me. Martha says it's your only chance." Eleanor hesitated for only a moment. What choice did she have? She grabbed her bag, tucked her mother's locket, the one thing of value Victoria hadn't yet seized, into her bodice, and climbed carefully out the window. The descent down the ladder was terrifying, her hands slipping on the damp wood, her skirts tangling around her legs. But Thomas guided her expertly, and within moments they were racing across the dark gardens toward the woods beyond. The gamekeeper's cottage sat at the edge of the Ashworth property, long abandoned. As they approached, Eleanor saw a light burning in the window and 2 horses tethered outside. Thomas knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. The door opened immediately. Inside stood a man Eleanor had never seen before. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair and striking grey eyes that assessed her with intelligent concern. His clothing marked him as a gentleman, well-tailored and expensive, but his boots were mud-splattered from hard riding. "Miss Ashworth," he said, his voice deep and cultured. "My name is James Crawford, Duke of Thornwick. I apologize for the dramatic circumstances, but we have very little time. I've come to offer you my protection and my help in proving your innocence." Eleanor stared at him in confusion. The Duke of Thornwick? She had heard of him, of course, everyone had. He was known as one of the most powerful men in England, wealthy beyond measure, with connections that reached to the crown itself. But why would such a man involve himself in her troubles? "I don't understand," she said. "How do you even know who I am? Why would you help me?" The Duke's expression softened slightly. "Because your father once saved my life, Miss Ashworth, and because I've spent the past 2 weeks investigating your stepmother's claims. I know you're innocent. I have evidence that will prove it. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. If you're willing to trust me, I can protect you until we can clear your name. But Victoria's evidence, the documents, are forgeries. Very good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. I have a man who specializes in detecting such things. He's already examined them and can testify to their fraudulent nature. But Victoria has the local magistrate in her pocket. We need time to bring in judges from London, men who cannot be bribed or intimidated." Eleanor felt hope stirring for the first time in weeks. "My father saved your life?" The Duke nodded. 10 years ago, I was thrown from my horse during a hunt on neighboring property. Your father found me with a broken leg, carried me back to his home, and cared for me for 3 days until I was well enough to be moved. He refused any recompense, said he was simply doing what any decent man would do. I've never forgotten that kindness." His grey eyes met hers steadily. "I made him a promise then that I would always stand as friend to his family. I intend to keep that promise, Miss Ashworth. The question is, will you let me?" Before we continue, I want to thank each of you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me on this journey. Knowing that my voice reaches you, bringing these stories that mean so much to me, is truly special. Every view, every moment you spend here matters more than you know. Now brace yourselves, because what happens next will change everything. Eleanor looked at the Duke, at young Thomas's earnest face, at the promise of escape and vindication that seemed too good to be true. Every instinct told her to trust this man, yet years of betrayal had taught her caution. "If I come with you," she said slowly, "Victoria will say I fled because I'm guilty. She'll use it against me. She'll try, the Duke agreed, "but I have witnesses prepared to testify that you were in fear for your life, that your stepmother threatened you with forced marriage to a dangerous man. I have doctors ready to examine Lord Pemberton's previous wives' deaths. And I have something else, your father's private journals, which he entrusted to me years ago. In them, he wrote extensively about Victoria's manipulations, about his fears for your safety after his death. He knew she would come after your inheritance. He just didn't expect her to move so quickly or so viciously." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "He knew? He tried to protect me? He loved you very much, Miss Ashworth. You were his daughter in every way that mattered. The story Victoria told you tonight about your mother was a lie. I have your parents' marriage certificate, dated 2 years before your birth. Your mother was never a compromised governess. She was the daughter of a country vicar, educated and respectable. Victoria's poison runs deep." Something broke open inside Eleanor's chest, a dam of grief and fear and desperate hope. "Then take me," she whispered. "Please get me away from here." The Duke nodded and turned to Thomas. "You've done well, son. There's a purse for you and Martha in the saddlebag. Take it and say nothing. If anyone asks, you slept soundly all night and noticed nothing amiss." "Yes, Your Grace." "God bless you, miss," Thomas said to Eleanor, squeezing her hand briefly before disappearing into the night. The Duke helped Eleanor onto one of the horses, a gentle mare who stood patient despite Eleanor's inexpert mounting. "We ride to Thornwick Hall," he explained, swinging easily onto his own horse. "It's a 6-hour journey, but we'll make it before dawn if we push hard. You'll be safe there. Victoria has no power in my county, and no magistrate would dare enter my home without cause." They rode through the darkness, the Duke setting a swift but manageable pace. Eleanor clung to the saddle, exhausted and overwhelmed, but feeling for the first time that she might survive this nightmare. As the miles passed, the Duke spoke to her of inconsequential things: the weather, the countryside, the beauty of his estate. He was giving her time to process, to calm her racing heart, and she was grateful for his sensitivity. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, they crested a hill, and Eleanor saw Thornwick Hall spread out before them. It was magnificent, a sprawling stone manor surrounded by manicured gardens, with a lake glinting in the early morning light. But more than its beauty, it represented safety, sanctuary. "Welcome to Thornwick Hall, Miss Ashworth," the Duke said quietly. "For as long as you need it, this is your home." They arrived at the main entrance, just as the household was beginning to stir. Servants came running to take the horses, their eyes widening at the sight of their master returning with a disheveled young woman. But the Duke's commanding presence brooked no gossip. Within moments, Eleanor was whisked inside and turned over to the housekeeper, Mrs. Whitmore, a kindly woman with grey hair and warm brown eyes. "Draw a bath for Miss Ashworth," the Duke instructed. "Give her the blue room in the east wing, and see that she has everything she needs. She's been through a terrible ordeal. I want her to rest undisturbed." "Of course, Your Grace," Mrs. Whitmore said, her voice full of motherly concern. She took Eleanor's arm gently. "Come with me, dear. Let's get you cleaned up and into a proper bed." Eleanor followed numbly, too exhausted to do more than place one foot before the other. The blue room was beautiful, all soft furnishings and gentle light, with a 4-poster bed that looked like heaven itself. A fire already burned in the grate, chasing away the morning chill. "I'll have your bath ready in just a moment," Mrs. Whitmore said. "Are you hungry, dear? You look half-starved." "I haven't eaten much in days," Eleanor admitted. "Well, we'll fix that. I'll bring you a proper breakfast after your bath. Don't you worry about a thing now. His Grace will sort out your troubles. He's the best man I've ever known, and when he sets his mind to helping someone, heaven and earth couldn't stop him." True to her word, Mrs. Whitmore returned shortly, with maids carrying a copper bathtub and buckets of hot water. They prepared the bath with practiced efficiency, adding fragrant oils that made Eleanor's eyes prick with tears. It had been so long since anyone had shown her simple kindness. The bath was bliss. Eleanor sank into the hot water and felt weeks of tension slowly draining from her body. She washed away the dirt and fear, scrubbed her skin until it glowed pink and clean. When she finally emerged, wrapped in soft towels, she found a nightgown and robe laid out for her, along with a tray of food that made her stomach growl despite her emotional turmoil. She ate ravenously, fresh bread with butter and jam, eggs cooked to perfection, bacon and sausages, fruit and cheese. It was the first real meal she'd had since before her father's funeral. With her hunger satisfied and her body clean, Eleanor finally crawled into the enormous bed. The sheets were crisp and cool, the pillows soft as clouds. Within moments, she was asleep. She dreamed of her father, of his gentle smile and kind eyes. In her dream, he was young and healthy again, walking with her through the gardens at Ashworth Manor. "You're stronger than you know, Eleanor," he told her. "Trust in truth, and truth will set you free." When she woke, tears were drying on her cheeks, but she felt somehow comforted. The room was dark. Evening had fallen while she slept. A single candle burned on the bedside table, and Eleanor saw a note propped against it. In an elegant hand it read, "Rest as long as you need. When you're ready, pull the bell cord and someone will bring you supper and help you dress. We dine at 8 if you feel up to joining me, but there's no obligation. You are safe here. J.C." Eleanor held the note, studying the firm, confident handwriting. The Duke of Thornwick was a puzzle. She had heard tales of him, of course. Who hadn't? He was said to be brilliant, wealthy beyond imagination, and fiercely private. Some called him cold and calculating. Others spoke of his generosity to his tenants and his fairness in business dealings. He had never married, despite being considered one of England's most eligible bachelors. There were whispers about a lost love, a woman who had died young, but no one seemed to know the full story. Why would such a man involve himself so personally in her troubles? Yes, he claimed a debt to her father, but most men would have sent lawyers, money, perhaps written testimony. They wouldn't have ridden through the night to rescue a young woman they'd never met. They wouldn't have brought her to their own home, given her shelter and protection, unless he had ulterior motives, unless he expected something in return. The thought chilled Eleanor, even as she pushed it away. She had become so accustomed to betrayal that she now suspected kindness as well. That was what Victoria had done to her, poisoned her ability to trust. But what choice did she have? She could hardly leave Thornwick Hall and return to face Victoria's schemes. For now, she would accept the Duke's help and remain wary. If he proved trustworthy, so much the better. If not, well, she had already lost everything. There was a strange freedom in that. Eleanor pulled the bell cord. Within moments, a young maid appeared, all smiles and curtsy. "Miss Ashworth, how lovely that you're awake. Mrs. Whitmore said to help you dress if you'd like to join His Grace for dinner. I've laid out some gowns that should fit you. They belonged to the Duke's mother before she passed. I do hope you don't think it presumptuous." "Not at all," Eleanor said. "It's very kind." The maid, who introduced herself as Lucy, helped Eleanor into a beautiful evening gown of deep green silk. It fit remarkably well, requiring only minor adjustments. Lucy dressed Eleanor's hair in a simple but elegant style, and when Eleanor finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The haunted, frightened girl from Ashworth Manor was gone, replaced by someone who looked almost like her old self, the confident young woman she had been before grief and betrayal had nearly destroyed her. "His Grace is in the dining room, miss," Lucy said. "Shall I show you the way?" Eleanor followed Lucy through the magnificent halls of Thornwick Hall. Everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of wealth and taste, fine paintings, beautiful furnishings, architecture that spoke of centuries of careful stewardship. But there was warmth here too, Not the cold ostentation she might have expected. It felt like a home, not a museum. The dining room was intimate despite its size, lit by candles that cast a golden glow. The Duke of Thornwick stood as she entered, and Eleanor was struck again by his presence. He was handsome, certainly, with strong features and intelligent eyes. But it was more than that. There was a quality of contained power about him, of capability and confidence that made her feel safer just being in his presence. "Miss Ashworth," he said warmly, "I'm so glad you felt well enough to join me. Please sit." He held her chair, a gentlemanly gesture that spoke of genuine respect rather than mere formality. As the servants brought the first course, the Duke kept the conversation light, asking her about her favorite books, her interests, her views on various inconsequential matters. He was giving her space to recover, Eleanor realized, not pressing her about her ordeal or demanding gratitude for his help. It wasn't until the main course had been served and they were alone, the Duke had dismissed the servants, that he broached the serious topics. "I know you must have questions," he said, "and concerns about what happens next. I want to be completely honest with you about everything." "I appreciate that," Eleanor replied. "To begin with, I'd like to know exactly how you came to be involved in my situation. You said my father saved your life, but that was 10 years ago. How did you even know about Victoria's schemes?" The Duke nodded approvingly. "Good. You should question me. I'd be worried if you didn't." He set down his fork. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from your father's lawyer, Mr. Jameson. You may not know this, but your father had 2 lawyers, the one Victoria used for the public reading of the will, and Mr. Jameson, his private counsel. Your father had instructed Jameson to contact me immediately upon his death if anything suspicious occurred regarding your inheritance. My father planned for this? Eleanor felt her throat tighten. He feared it. Victoria had already made several attempts to diminish your inheritance while your father was alive. He blocked her each time, but he knew that after his death, she would act quickly. He asked me years ago if I would serve as your protector if needed. I gave him my word. But you never contacted me directly. I couldn't risk alerting Victoria that you had allies. Instead, I sent investigators to gather evidence. What they discovered was damning. Victoria has been forging documents for years, siphoning money from the estate. The papers she produced accusing you were created by the same forger she's been using for her own thefts. We have testimony from the forger himself. He was quite eager to cooperate once we offered him immunity from prosecution. I'm so curious. What country or state are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. It amazes me how these stories travel across the world and touch hearts in places I've never been. I can't wait to see where you all are joining me from. Now, prepare yourself, because the intensity is about to reach its peak. Eleanor's hands trembled as she set down her wine glass. You have proof? Real proof that I'm innocent? Irrefutable proof. Enough to see Victoria prosecuted for fraud, a forgery and attempted theft. Your brother Edward may face charges as well, depending on how much he knew of her schemes. Edward's weak, not evil, Eleanor said quietly. He's always done whatever his mother told him. He probably convinced himself the lies were true. That's generous of you, considering what he's put you through. He's still my brother, half-brother at least. I don't want to see him destroyed, even if he was willing to let Victoria destroy me. The Duke studied her face for a long moment. You have a remarkably forgiving nature, Miss Ashworth. Many people in your position would be crying for vengeance. I just want my life back, Eleanor said. My inheritance, my good name, my freedom. Is that truly possible? It is. But there's something you need to understand. Once we move forward with this, it will become very public. Victoria will fight back with everything she has. She'll spread more lies, try to turn society against you. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. The legal proceedings alone could take months. And in the meantime, I'll be living here, under your protection." Eleanor tried to keep her voice neutral, but she couldn't quite hide her unease. Won't that cause a scandal in itself? An unmarried woman living in a bachelor's home? The Duke's lips quirked in a slight smile. "I've thought of that. My aunt, Lady Catherine Thornwick, lives in the north wing of the house. She's elderly and rarely comes downstairs, but she's perfectly respectable and serves as a suitable chaperone. Additionally, I have a proposal that might resolve both the scandal issue and provide you additional protection." Eleanor's stomach clenched. "What kind of proposal?" "A business arrangement, nothing more. We could announce an engagement, temporary and private, just between us. To the world, you would be my betrothed, which would explain your presence here and provide you with the protection of my name. When your legal troubles are resolved and you've regained your inheritance, we would quietly end the engagement. You would be free to go wherever you wish, do whatever you choose with your life." "Why would you do that?" Eleanor asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. "What do you gain from such an arrangement?" The Duke's grey eyes met hers steadily. "Peace of mind. I promised your father I would protect you. This is the most effective way to do so. As for what I gain, the satisfaction of keeping my word, and perhaps the pleasure of your company for a few months. I confess, Thornwick Hall can be lonely. Having someone to talk to over dinner would be a welcome change. That's all? You expect nothing else?" Eleanor knew she was being blunt, but she needed to hear him say it. "I expect nothing else," the Duke said firmly. "You would have your own quarters, your own life within these walls. I would make no demands on you beyond the public fiction of our engagement. And Miss Ashworth, I want to be absolutely clear. If you're uncomfortable with this arrangement, we can find another solution. I will not use your vulnerable position to coerce you into anything. You have my word as a gentleman." Eleanor looked at him, searching his face for any hint of deception. All she saw was earnest sincerity, and really, what choice did she have, even if his motives weren't entirely pure? She needed his protection. She needed time and safety to fight Victoria's accusations. "Very well," she said. "I accept your proposal, the business arrangement, as you called it, but I want it in writing, the terms clearly stated, including the temporary nature of the engagement." The Duke smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. "You're wise not to trust blindly. I'll have my lawyer draw up a contract tomorrow. In the meantime, shall we discuss how we'll proceed with proving your innocence?" They talked for hours, long after the dinner dishes had been cleared. The Duke laid out his strategy. They would first gather all evidence, then bring it to judges in London who were beyond Victoria's reach. They would need testimony from servants at Ashworth Manor, from the forger, from Mr. Jameson, the lawyer. They would need to examine the original will and compare it to Victoria's forged documents. "It will take time," the Duke warned. "Perhaps 3 months, perhaps 6. Victoria will fight us at every turn." "I have nothing but time now," Eleanor replied, "and I want her to face justice, not just for what she did to me, but for what she's stolen from Edward. Whatever his faults, he's being robbed by his own mother." As the night deepened, Eleanor found herself relaxing in the Duke's presence. He was surprisingly easy to talk to, with a dry wit that occasionally made her laugh despite everything. He asked her about her interests, and seemed genuinely fascinated by her passion for botany and her sketches of wildflowers. When she mentioned that she'd been forced to leave most of her belongings behind, including her sketchbooks, his face darkened with anger. "We'll retrieve them," he said, "along with anything else of yours that Victoria has seized. Consider it done. She'll never allow it. She won't have a choice. I'm the Duke of Thornwick. When I send men to collect your belongings, they will be collected. There was steel in his voice, a reminder that for all his kindness, this was a man of immense power. Eleanor felt a flutter of something in her chest. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too, something that felt dangerously like attraction. She pushed the thought away. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man who was helping her out of obligation. Besides, powerful men like the Duke of Thornwick didn't actually fall for penniless young women, no matter what romantic novels suggested. He would help her, and then they would part ways. That was all. But as she retired to her room that night, she couldn't help replaying their conversation, couldn't help remembering the way his eyes had softened when he spoke of her father, the gentle respect with which he treated her. She fell asleep thinking of grey eyes and a voice that made her feel, for the first time in weeks, that everything might actually be all right. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find Lucy bringing breakfast on a tray. "His Grace thought you might like to eat in your room this morning," the maid said cheerfully. "He's had to ride out to meet with some people about your case, but he left you a note." Eleanor opened the note eagerly. The Duke's handwriting was becoming familiar, and she found comfort in its firm, clear strokes. "Miss Ashworth, I've gone to meet with Mr. Jameson and my investigators. I should return by evening. Please make yourself at home. The library is yours to use, and Mrs. Whitmore will show you the gardens if you'd like some fresh air. My aunt has expressed interest in meeting you at your convenience. She's quite harmless despite her formidable reputation. Rest, read, do whatever brings you comfort. You're safe here. J.C." Eleanor smiled despite herself. The Duke was being remarkably considerate, giving her space while ensuring she didn't feel abandoned. She decided to take him up on the offer of the library. Reading had always been her solace, and she'd been deprived of books during her confinement at Ashworth Manor. The library at Thornwick Hall was magnificent, 2 stories of books with a spiral staircase leading to a gallery above. Eleanor spent hours there, losing herself in volumes of poetry, history, and botanical studies. She found a collection of illustrated plant books that made her heart sing, and was deep in a treatise on English wildflowers when a voice startled her. "So you're the girl James has taken under his wing." Eleanor looked up to see an elderly woman standing in the doorway, leaning on an ebony cane. She was small and wizened, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. This had to be Lady Catherine Thornwick. "Lady Catherine," Eleanor said, standing and curtsying. "I'm Eleanor Ashworth. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Is it?" The old woman made her way to a chair and sat with a sigh. "We'll see about that. Tell me, girl, what are your intentions toward my nephew?" Eleanor blinked in surprise. "My intentions? Lady Catherine, His Grace is helping me out of obligation to my father. There's nothing more to it than that." "Isn't there? James doesn't bring young women to Thornwick Hall, ever. In all the years since he inherited this estate, you're the first woman he's invited to stay. The circumstances are unusual. The circumstances are always unusual. Child. But James could have sent lawyers, money, protection from a distance. Instead, he rode through the night to rescue you personally. That's not obligation. That's something else." Eleanor felt heat rising in her cheeks. "I assure you, Lady Catherine, the Duke has been nothing but proper. We have a business arrangement, nothing more." "A business arrangement?" Lady Catherine repeated, her tone skeptical. "How very modern. And you feel nothing for him, this man who's risked scandal to save you." "I barely know him," Eleanor protested. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. In their hours of conversation the night before, she had felt a connection forming, a sense of understanding that went beyond mere gratitude. Lady Catherine's shrewd eyes saw too much. "You're a terrible liar, child. But don't worry, I won't interfere. If James has finally found someone who interests him, who am I to stand in the way? God knows he's been alone too long." "He was in love before?" Eleanor asked before she could stop herself. Once, many years ago, a girl from the village, pretty thing but common born. James's father forbade the match, said a duke couldn't marry beneath his station. James was young, only 20, and he obeyed. The girl married someone else, died in childbirth a year later. James blamed himself, thought if he'd defied his father and married her, she'd still be alive. Eleanor's heart ached for the young man the Duke had been, forced to give up his love, then punished by her death. How terrible. "Whoa, it shaped him," Lady Catherine said. "Made him suspicious of titles and social position, made him value character over breeding. It's why he never married, why he lives here so quietly despite being one of the most powerful men in England. He doesn't trust society, doesn't believe in its rules anymore. Then why does he care so much about my reputation? Why suggest a false engagement? Because however much he disdains society's rules, he won't see you ruined by them. That's the kind of man James is. He protects people, even when it costs him." Lady Catherine leaned forward. "Be careful with his heart, child. It's been broken once. I don't think it could survive being broken again." Before Eleanor could respond, they heard the sound of horses in the courtyard. Lady Catherine's face brightened. "That'll be James back from his meetings. Go on, girl. He'll want to tell you what he's learned." Eleanor found the Duke in his study, still in his riding clothes, spreading documents across his desk. He looked up as she entered, and his face relaxed into a smile. "Miss Ashworth, good. I was about to send for you. We've had an excellent day." He gestured to the papers. "Mr. Jameson has provided copies of your father's original will, which clearly shows Victoria's version is fraudulent. And better still, 3 servants from Ashworth Manor have agreed to testify about Victoria's behavior and her threats against you." 3 servants? Who? Martha, of course, and Thomas the stable boy. And surprisingly, your father's former valet, Mr. Hendricks. Apparently, he's been retired and living with his sister in Cornwall, but he heard about your troubles and came forward. He has evidence that Victoria was poisoning your father in his final months. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "Poisoning him? But the doctor said it was his heart." "A heart weakened by arsenic poisoning administered in small doses over time. Hendricks suspected, but couldn't prove it while your father lived. He's been gathering evidence since the funeral, waiting for the right moment to come forward. Now, we have that evidence." "Victoria murdered my father." Eleanor felt the room spinning. She had known her stepmother was cruel, manipulative, greedy, but murder. The Duke was at her side immediately, guiding her to a chair. "I'm sorry. I should have broken that to you more gently. But yes, it appears Victoria has been plotting for years. Your father's death, the forgeries, the attempt to have you declared insane or imprisoned. It's all part of a long-term scheme to seize the entire estate." "And Edward, does he know?" "We don't believe so. Edward appears to be simply a weak-willed son manipulated by his mother. We may be able to offer him immunity in exchange for his testimony against Victoria." Eleanor buried her face in her hands. Her father had been murdered. The man who had raised her, loved her, protected her, killed by the woman he'd married. The grief she'd been holding at bay came flooding back, mixed now with rage. "She'll pay for this," Eleanor said, her voice shaking. "I want her to face justice for everything she's done, not just to me, but to my father. He deserves that." "She will," the Duke promised. "I swear to you, Eleanor, Victoria Ashworth will answer for her crimes." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and something about the intimacy of it, combined with the fierce protectiveness in his voice, made Eleanor look up at him. Their eyes met and held. In that moment, Eleanor felt something shift between them, something that went beyond gratitude or obligation. "James," she said softly, testing his name on her tongue. "Thank you for everything." His hand covered hers where it rested on the chair arm. "You don't need to thank me. I'm only doing what should have been done from the start, protecting someone who deserves protection." They stayed like that for a moment, hands touching, eyes locked. Then the Duke seemed to catch himself and stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you rest. This has been overwhelming news. We can discuss the next steps tomorrow." But Eleanor stood, not ready to be dismissed. "No, I want to know everything. I want to be part of this, not just a victim waiting to be saved. What happens next?" The Duke's smile was approving. "Very well. Tomorrow we'll meet with my lawyers and begin preparing formal charges. We'll need your testimony about what happened after your father's death, the threats, the imprisonment, everything Victoria said and did. It won't be easy, reliving all of that." "I can handle it," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm not the frightened girl Victoria tried to break. Not anymore." "No," the Duke agreed, looking at her with something that might have been admiration. "You're not. You're remarkable, Eleanor Ashworth. Your father would be proud of the woman you've become." Over the following weeks, Eleanor and the Duke worked together to build their case. They met with lawyers, investigators, and potential witnesses. Eleanor gave lengthy depositions describing everything Victoria had done. It was exhausting and emotional, but the Duke was always there, a steady presence of support and encouragement. They also spent increasing amounts of time together outside of work on the case. The Duke showed Eleanor his estate, introduced her to his tenants, took her riding through the countryside. She met Lady Catherine regularly for tea, and the old woman's initial suspicion transformed into genuine affection. Eleanor found herself settling into life at Thornwick Hall in ways she hadn't expected. The servants treated her with respect, even deference. Mrs. Whitmore fussed over her like a mother. Lucy became a friend as much as a maid, and James, she thought of him as James now, though she still called him Your Grace in public, was becoming essential to her happiness. She tried to remind herself that this was temporary, that once her legal troubles were resolved, she would leave Thornwick Hall and resume her own life. But increasingly, that prospect felt less like freedom and more like loss. One evening, about 6 weeks after her arrival, Eleanor was reading in the library when James came to find her. He looked troubled, and Eleanor's heart sank. Had something gone wrong with their case? "What is it?" she asked immediately. "What's happened?" "Nothing bad," he assured her quickly. "Quite the opposite, actually. Victoria has been arrested. The evidence was so overwhelming that even the magistrate she'd bribed couldn't ignore it. She's been charged with murder, fraud, forgery, and attempted kidnapping. Edward has agreed to testify against her in exchange for immunity." Eleanor should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt oddly hollow. "So it's over. The charges are filed. The trial will likely take place in 2 months. But yes, essentially it's over. You're free, Eleanor. Your inheritance is secured, your name cleared. Victoria will spend the rest of her life in prison if she's not hanged for murder." "That's wonderful," Eleanor said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. "Thank you, James. I couldn't have done any of this without you." There's something else," James said, sitting down across from her. He looked uncomfortable, even nervous, emotions Eleanor had never seen him display before. "Our engagement. The false one we announced. Now that your troubles are resolved, we should probably discuss dissolving it." "Of course," Eleanor said quickly. "I imagine you'll want your privacy back. I can find lodgings in London, or perhaps return to the Cornwall estate my father left me. I shouldn't impose on your hospitality any longer." "Impose?" James looked startled. "Eleanor, you're not imposing. You could stay here as long as you like. Lady Catherine adores you. The servants have all commented on how much brighter the house is with you in it. And I—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. "You," Eleanor prompted, her heart beating faster. James stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about our arrangement. about how it's worked out rather well these past weeks. You've brought life to Thornwick Hall, Eleanor. You've brought life to me. Eleanor rose and moved closer to him, drawn by something in his voice. James, what are you saying? He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his grey eyes took her breath away. I'm saying that somewhere along the way, our false engagement stopped feeling false, at least to me. I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Eleanor Ashworth, and the thought of you leaving fills me with more dread than I can express. Eleanor's world tilted. You love me? Desperately. Completely. I know it's madness. We've only known each other a few weeks, and I'm too old for you, and you probably see me as nothing more than the man who helped you in your time of need. But I had to tell you before you left. I had to give you the choice. The choice? James took her hands in his. Stay with me, Eleanor. Not as part of a business arrangement, but as my true betrothed. Marry me because you want to, not because you need protection. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy, showing you what real love looks like. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face, but they were tears of joy. You think you're too old for me? James, you're the first man who's ever truly seen me. You valued my mind, my strength, my opinions. You never tried to diminish me or control me. You made me feel safe at a time when I had no reason to trust anyone. Is that a yes? James asked, hope lighting his features. That's a yes, Eleanor laughed through her tears. I love you too, James Crawford. I think I started falling in love with you that first night, when you promised to protect me, and I saw the honor in your eyes. I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself. James pulled her into his arms, and their first kiss was everything Eleanor had never dared to dream of. Tender and passionate, gentle and fierce, a promise of all the years to come. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and smiling. I want to do this properly, James said. I want to court you the way you deserve, give you a real engagement, a wedding that everyone will talk about for years. I want the world to know that Eleanor Ashworth chose to marry the Duke of Thornwick not for his title or his wealth, but for love. I think they'll know, Eleanor said, touching his face with wonder. I think it will be written all over us every time we look at each other. And so, we reach the end of this journey together. I hope this story touched your heart as deeply as it touched mine in telling it. If you loved this tale of betrayal, redemption, and the love that heals all wounds, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next story I have waiting for you. Leave a comment telling me which moment moved you most. I read every single one, and your words mean the world to me. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling these stories with me. Until our next adventure together. 2 months later, Eleanor stood in the drawing room of Thornwick Hall, wearing a gown of ivory silk and lace. Victoria's trial had concluded with a conviction on all charges. She would spend the rest of her life in prison. Edward, granted immunity for his testimony, had quietly sold Ashworth Manor and moved to the continent. He had apologized to Eleanor, tearfully admitting his cowardice, and she had forgiven him. Some wounds would heal with time, others would remain as scars, but she refused to let bitterness poison her new happiness. Lady Catherine adjusted Eleanor's veil with hands that trembled slightly. You look beautiful, child, like the daughter I never had. Thank you, Eleanor whispered, for welcoming me, for accepting me. Accept you? My dear girl, I'd have dragged James to the altar by his ear if he'd been fool enough to let you go. You're the best thing that ever happened to this family. Martha was there too, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Your father would be so proud, Miss Eleanor. So proud. Through the window, Eleanor could see the gardens of Thornwick Hall in full bloom, guests beginning to arrive for the wedding. It was a small affair by aristocratic standards, close friends, loyal servants, and a few carefully chosen members of society. Eleanor had wanted it intimate and genuine, and James had agreed immediately. "Are you ready?" Lady Catherine asked. Eleanor smiled, thinking of James waiting for her in the chapel, thinking of the life they would build together, thinking of how she'd survived betrayal and emerged stronger. I'm ready for everything." She walked down the aisle on the arm of Mr. Jameson, her father's loyal lawyer who had helped engineer her rescue. James waited at the altar, his face transformed by joy when he saw her. As Eleanor took his hand and they spoke their vows, she felt her father's presence like a blessing. He had protected her even after death, had arranged for her salvation through his friendship with this remarkable man. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception joyful. Eleanor danced with her husband, and felt truly, completely happy for the first time since her father's death. She was Eleanor Crawford now, Duchess of Thornwick, but she was still herself. James had never wanted to change her, only to love her. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, James led Eleanor to the terrace overlooking the gardens. "Happy, my love?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. "Beyond measure," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "James, do you ever regret how we met? The scandal, the drama?" "Regret? Never. I'd face 100 scandals to have you by my side. Besides," he added with a smile, "I suspect our life together will never be boring. You're far too remarkable for that." Eleanor laughed, turning in his arms to kiss him. "I love you, James Crawford. And I love you, Eleanor Crawford, now and always." They stood together as darkness fell, two people who had found each other in the midst of betrayal and chaos, who had built something true and lasting from the ashes of cruelty. Eleanor had lost her family, but gained something infinitely better, a partner who valued her, a love that honored her strength, and a future filled with possibility. The manor house glowed with candlelight behind them, their home now, their sanctuary. And Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that every moment of suffering had been worth it to arrive at this happiness. She had been betrayed by those who should have protected her, but she had been saved by a loyal duke who became so much more. This was not the ending Victoria had planned for her. This was better. This was everything.